Local government funding is in crisis, from social care to special needs, homelessness to high streets. Their work impacts every one of us, and our councils, the backbone of local service delivery, are being pushed to the brink. While this estimate does sound positive, it is way more complicated, like the work the councils do. Now, a lack of funding is not a new problem. The hollowing out of local government has been happening for a decade, and in places like my home councils of BCP and Dorset, central funding through revenue support was slashed by between 95% and 98% over that time. So the government's announcement to weight central funding for councils with a low tax base sort of misses the point, because many councils in the south receive no revenue support grant and are already raising their council tax by the maximum of 5% each year. So the government really needs to talk to those councils that they're targeting and review the proposals before they create a new problem. These areas are dealing with ageing populations and soaring house prices, and councils risk having no choice but to take money directly from services for the poorest, sickest and most vulnerable. The 3-year settlements are welcome to help planning, and the headline £13.5 billion increase by 28-29 sounds positive, but measured against 25-26, it's actually a real terms cut of 0.6%. And while the MHCLG day-to-day spending will rise by £2.5 billion, much of this is through transfers. For example, much of the £857 million for adult social care is reallocated from children's social care, and £512 million for covering national insurance contribution, which doesn't actually cover the demand. Adult social care is now the largest spending area for upper-tier authorities. Meanwhile, tensions between the NHS and councils over who funds the sick and elderly are growing, leaving families stuck in the middle, with carers bearing the brunt, often forced to choose between caring and working, which has knock-on effects on the wider economy and their well-being. And the situation is made worse because independent providers are not covered for the next increase. The Nuffield Trust estimates that increases in national insurance were costing independent social care employers £940 million this year. So many are handing back their contracts, unable to make the numbers add up, piling the pressures onto councils. So I urge the Minister to look closely at the impact of this change. Liberal Democrats want to see a social care workforce plan, a Royal College of Care Workers to improve recognition, and a high as carers minimum wage. And we call on the government to complete the Casey review within a year, not 3. The elderly, disabled and our NHS deserve better than a further delay. The crisis extends beyond adult care, affecting our youngest children too. SEND provision, as we know, is inconsistent and underfunded, with exhausted parents, overwhelmed teachers and children being left behind. We are relieved, rather than happy, that the statutory override continues for another 2 years, because without it, many councils would face insolvency within months. But this does merely defer the inevitable. As debts outgrow reserves, councils cannot invest in their communities and therefore drive local growth. So the upcoming white paper must guarantee every child within EHCP the support that works for them, make mainstream education more inclusive so children can stay home with their peers, and urgently reform the funding formula. That funding formula does not work. In some areas, the annual base funding per pupil is £2,500 less than in other areas. And schools have to fund the first £6,000 for any special educational support. Some schools don't get £6,000 a year for the whole education. Liberal Democrats really are begging for this to be resolved. And in specialist provision, I've seen independent settings charge over £100,000 to educate children with moderate needs when a state-maintained special school is doing the same for £20,000. But without alternatives, councils are forced to pay. The loss of the £100 million Rural Services Delivery Grant was a huge blow to rural councils, so I welcome the consultation on reviewing that. But it's not just higher delivery costs, it's recruitment challenges too. And it was wrong for the government to suggest that rural communities don't face the same deprivation. Tell that to some of my constituents in Mid-Dorset and North Poole who have no mains gas, no sewerage, they're miles from anything and no job opportunities. We welcome the £267 million for rough sleeping and £194 million for homelessness prevention, and we're pleased as Liberal Democrats to see this has been ring-fenced. But without a target for social house building, councils remain burdened with the costs of temporary accommodation. And it's not just about money. The recent MHCLG committee report revealed that temporary housing is so detrimental to our children's health, with 74 children, including 58 infants, dying in the last 5 years as a factor. It also damages the development, mental health and life chances of every child in that situation. So we welcome the £39 billion investment in affordable housing, but are disappointed to see how backloaded it is, meaning that many families will wait up to 10 years to finally get a roof over their heads. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to address devolution. Liberal Democrats support genuine devolution, and we're disappointed that the government has cancelled funding for neighbourhood plans and is discouraging the formation of new town and parish councils where there's local government reorganisation. Instead, we're seeing top-down area committees with no statutory powers. And finally, the spending review mentions funding for mayoral areas, but this only benefits areas ready to go. What about the areas outside Wave 1, like Kent and Medway or Wessex? Where is their support in the meantime? Our local councils deliver every day, but they can't do it alone. So please, I urge you to provide fair funding and real devolution for those areas.